You're in the shower, and somewhere between washing your hair and standing there completely motionless for 10 minutes, you've already rehearsed an argument with someone who doesn't even know they upset you yet. Or maybe you're driving to work, and halfway through the road, you suddenly deliver the most articulate response to something your manager said 3 weeks ago. Perfect timing. Everyone in the imaginary room is quietly impressed. Then a car horn pulls you back, and you realize you've been driving with the expression of someone accepting a Lifetime Achievement Award. If any part of that made you want to look around nervously, good, because there's something that happens inside a very specific kind of mind that almost nobody talks about properly. Not the normal, everyone daydreams sometimes thing. That's not what this is. This is something that slowly stops feeling like a habit and starts feeling like a place you actually live. And the reason people rarely explain it correctly is because from the inside, it doesn't usually feel like a problem. It feels like relief. So, what's actually happening when you do this? Your brain has something called the default mode network. It activates specifically when you stop focusing on the outside world. The moment your attention drifts away from what's in front of you, this network lights up and starts generating internal experiences, memories, fears, imagined futures, rehearsed conversations. It's doing exactly what it was designed to do. But for some people, that network doesn't just activate occasionally, it becomes the brain's preferred setting. The internal world starts feeling more emotionally rewarding than reality itself. And once that happens, real life can begin to feel strangely flat by comparison, like something is missing from it. A psychologist formally identified this pattern in the early 2000s and called it maladaptive daydreaming. And honestly, even that term doesn't fully capture what it feels like from the inside, because this isn't just distraction. Some people spend hours inside narratives they've built entirely in their own minds, detailed worlds, recurring characters, storylines that continue evolving for months or even years. And most of them have one thing in common: the fantasy world gives them something the real world didn't. Not escapism in the lazy way people usually use that word. Something deeper than that: control, emotional resolution, connection that feels safe. Inside your imagination, conversations can finally go the way you needed them to. You can replay them, rewind them, make the other person finally understand you in a way reality never quite allowed. And honestly, that's a very intelligent adaptation. The problem only starts when the brain begins learning that emotional needs can be met internally more easily than externally, because eventually, stepping back into real life starts feeling worse than staying inside your head. Real people are unpredictable. Real conversations don't follow scripts. Real intimacy is uncomfortable, uncertain, and slow. The imagined version never disappoints you in the same way. So naturally, the brain keeps returning there. And people misunderstand this constantly. It's not simply about creativity. Some extremely creative people never experience this at all. And some people who've never written a single story in their lives do it compulsively every day. Research suggests that people most prone to this often score high in something called absorption, which basically means they become deeply immersed in emotional experiences. Music affects them intensely. Films stay with them for days. Conversations replay in their minds long after they end. They don't just process emotions deeply, they feel everything deeply. So eventually, many of them build an inner space where emotions can exist safely and entirely on their own terms. And then comes the most damaging part: the shame spiral. Because somewhere in the background, you always know time is passing. You know the world kept moving while you disappeared into another scenario again. And when you finally come back, there's often this strange emotional aftertaste, hard to explain, easy to recognize. And before you consciously decide anything, you're already halfway back inside your own head again. So the cycle strengthens itself. The shame feeds the need deepens the habit, And slowly, the habit starts occupying more and more space where your actual life is supposed to be happening. But this part matters. None of this means something is fundamentally wrong with you. Most people who develop this pattern originally needed an emotional escape the real world wasn't providing. Maybe home didn't feel safe. Maybe they were chronically lonely. Maybe they were simply too emotionally sensitive for the environment they ended up in. So the nervous system adapted creatively. It built another place to survive emotionally, which means the daydream itself was never really the problem. It was the solution. The real question is whether that solution is still helping you now, or whether it slowly became the place where your real life stopped moving forward. And this is usually where people immediately jump to fixing themselves. But psychologically, that completely misses the point. The goal isn't to destroy your inner world. The goal isn't to become someone who never disappears into thought. The real goal is understanding what the disappearing keeps doing for you. What emotional need keeps repeating there? What kind of connection only feels safe in imagination? What conversations are you still rehearsing because some part of you never got closure? Because usually the fantasy itself points towards something real, a real unmet need, a real fear, a real longing that never found a safe place to exist openly. And healing often begins when you slowly start building pieces of that in reality instead of only experiencing them internally, awkwardly, imperfectly, little by little. Because the ability to build emotionally rich worlds inside your own mind is not something meaningless. It reflects depth, sensitivity, emotional complexity. A lot of people who experience this intensely are carrying enormous internal richness that simply never found the right outlet, the right relationship, or the right moment of safety to exist fully in the real world. And maybe that's the real tragedy here. Not that they imagined so deeply, but that somewhere along the way, they learned depth only felt safe when nobody else could see it. So, if this entire video felt less like information and more like recognition, not the, oh, that's interesting kind, the quieter kind, the kind where you suddenly felt understood in a way you didn't expect, then maybe the point isn't to judge yourself for adapting this way. Maybe the point is simply to understand why your mind needed it in the first place. If this resonated with you, make sure to subscribe, leave a like, and share your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely appreciate you being here.